Hey everyone, KPDK Christian here with another flying video. This is actually an important video for me because it's my first ever local solo. You'll see there's no one in the passenger seat, my instructor's not here, it's just me and Annie, a Piper Cherokee. This is about 40 minutes of footage, and instead of doing one really long video, I'm going to split it up into a few different parts. So this first part is the plane ignition sequence, so how to turn on Piper Cherokee, as well as taxiing to the run-up and performing the run-up. And then I'll switch to a different video for the flight to KLZU, which is a relatively small Class Delta airport north of Atlanta in Gwinnett. It's Gwinnett County Airport, Briscoe Field, for people who might know it as that. And then I spent a little bit of time around the Briscoe Field airspace, and then came back to PDK and did some touch and goes. So this will be a few different videos. This first one, again, ignition sequence. If you already know how to turn on an airplane and this is all boring, you can switch to the next video that should be linked in the channel description. All right, we got the good headphones today. These Bose. Every airplane that you'll ever fly has a checklist for how to do all these things. So you can see me fiddling with the checklist, getting to the right page. Adjust the seat, put on the seat belt, test the brakes. Brakes feel nice and squishy. Batteries on, fuel valve lowest tank, which is the right main, already on the right main. Nav and strobe on, carb off. Circuit breakers are in, the blower's out, which is intentional, and spider's out, which is intentional. Avionics off. All right, let's see if she wants to start this morning. We got no fuel pressure, that's not gonna work. Clear. There we go. Fuel pump back off. And lucky me, she started on the first try. This actually isn't anything important. I was trying to figure out how to make this extra little menu go away. I needed to get the starting takt time of the engine, and I'd done that and couldn't figure out how to get that thing away, but it wasn't actually blocking anything important, so I just kind of left it there. So those two clicks, the first one was the alternator, which is right next to the battery, the red switch, and then the left one was the avionics main, which is going to turn on that center screen and turn on my radios. The second click you just heard was the landing lights, and the I guess it's landing and position lights. It's those two middle switches. Check. And then I turned off the fuel pump because once the engine's running, there's an engine-driven fuel pump, and we don't need the electric backup fuel pump anymore. At this point, I'm configuring avionics, typically I like to have the traffic up on the left side and the map up on the right side. And then I switched over the radio to the PDK ATIS. What I just said was we've got whiskey, which is information whiskey. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But right now I'm listening to an automated broadcast of the airport information. It's telling me right now I'm adjusting the altimeter, which is basically what the pressure is like outside, so the aircraft can properly report its own altitude. So I listened to all the airport information. I just switched over back to the ground, Peachtree ground radio frequency.
Terrain system test. Okay.
All right, and we're not going to run into any mountains. Our terrain system check is okay. And then as I turn left here, you'll see that I pull up to this line that's a single solid line and a single dash line. That is the border between the non-movement area where you can kind of freely move around and the actual official taxiway. And so I have to make a call into Peachtree ground.
Good morning, Cherokee 103 Alpha Victor's at the northwest ramp with information whiskey to do VFR to the northeast.
Cherokee 103 Alpha at Peachtree ground, only 3 left, taxi Bravo Alpha.
3 left, Bravo Alpha 3 Alpha Victor.
So I have to get call from ground in order to permission from ground to cross that line and enter the actual taxiway. And they told me to taxi to runway 3 left via Bravo Alpha. So this main taxiway that I'm on right now is taxiway Bravo, and then up ahead I'll take a right onto Alpha and taxi down that way. I do have a copy of the ATIS. This isn't the Peachtree Dekalb ATIS, but this is what Hartsfield Jackson ATL's approach ATIS sounds like. And so this is similar to what I listened to, the airport information before I called into ground.
Atlanta Airport arrival information kilo 14520. Wind calm. Visibility 10. Your clouds at 20,000. 25,000 centered. Feeling breeze 0,000 broken. Temperature 26. 2.16. Altimeter breeze 006. Simultaneous approach is visual approach runway 26 right. Visual approach runway 27 left. Visual approach runway 28. Notices to airmen. Taxiway Romeo closed between taxiway R6 and taxiway R12. Taxiway R10 closed. Taxiway R11 closed. Taxiway Sierra Juliet closed. Bird activity vicinity of airport. Operate transponder with mode Charlie on the ramp. Taxiways and runways advise on initial contact. You have information kilo.
So in that example, it was information kilo. At the very beginning, they say airport information kilo, and at the very end, they say advise on initial contact. You have information kilo. And that basically, advise on initial contact means the first time that you make contact with either the tower or the ground control, just let them know that you have information kilo, and if that actually gets updated every hour. And so HIJKL, so Lima typically would be next. And so if information Lima just came out in between the time that I listened to it and now, I would say I've got information kilo, and tower would say that I have information Lima, Lima's current, and would give me the new information. So we're on Alpha. We can see a cool jet taking off over to the left. He's waiting for the next runway. And what we're about to do is called the run-up, which is something I didn't actually know existed until I started flying. But with these small planes, and really the big planes can do it too, they just typically do it on the taxiway on their way to the runway. But it's basically simulating what takeoff would be, to make sure that all of the important things like your oil pressure, fuel pressure, oil temperature, make sure that everything's good. The RPMs are good, and also really important to check the magnetos to make sure that the P leads are working, that the grounding's working fine, and that you're basically, you have redundancy in the thing that makes the engine work. You can hear that jet spinning up and taking off. Get a nice view of that. And so just like there's a checklist for turning on the plane, there's a checklist for doing the run-up. So making sure the flight controls are free, making sure that they feel good and normal, and that my inputs are actually moving the physical ailerons and elevators in the back. So I added full mixture and am getting up to 2,000 RPM. Cut that volume down a little bit. And so at 2,000 RPM, we check to make sure all the engine things are green. We're checking the left mag first. Left mag looks good. And we recover back to full. And now we're checking the right mag. And the right mag also looks good and goes back to full RPM. Checking the carb heat, make sure that the carb heat works. You can tell it's working if the RPMs drop slightly. So you can see they dropped from 2040 down to 1990. And then everything looked good, everything's all green. And so we'll check the carb heat one more time, make sure it drops from 810. This should only drop to 800 or maybe 790. So yep, carb heat is still working. Checking the altimeter, we're checking the heading, make sure that the magnetic compass agrees with our digital compass. And then this is configuring the rest of the avionics. So I'm about to fly to a different airport, and so I'm going to get my GPS set up. I'm going to get the other airport's frequencies set up because they have their own ATIS and they have their own tower. So that bottom radio is COM 2. I'm setting up the ATIS 13227 is Gwinnett County ATIS. And so I'll listen to that and they'll have some other information. Remember, I had information whiskey here. The recording that I played for you had information kilo, but that was an old recording. So I have whiskey, and then I'll listen to whatever Gwinnett's is, and then I'll have their information. So what I just did is tell ground that I'm done with my run-up and I'm ready to go to the runway.
Taxi 3 left, monitor tower.
And they said to taxi to runway 3 left and then to switch over to tower. So I'm all configured, ready for takeoff, and I'm going to just taxi up to this runway and hang out there. So tune into the next video, and that'll be the actual takeoff and flight to Gwinnett. See you guys later.